Everybody, as former University of Guam faculty member, Dr. Arthur Jackson spent 3 decades, 30 years, researching the life of his beloved grandfather, Arthur William Jackson, and his time right here on Guam. We have Dr. Jackson here to talk about this wonderful new book, the biography of Arthur W. Jackson. Dr. Jackson, a true pleasure. Thank you for coming in.
Hey, Jason, thank you so much.
Okay, obviously you are a student of history.
I love history.
But you are someone who has now applied this to your own work, and you're researching your own family, your own genealogy. Let's start out by saying, what did you know of your grandfather prior to beginning this endeavor?
Okay. Jason, let me try to answer that this way. First of all, there were very few contacts that I personally had with my grandfather. And the reason for that is because we left Guam way back in 1955. And after we left, obviously we don't have the opportunity anymore to meet with him. But because my dad and my grandfather were very close, we had some opportunities, you know, where the two get together. And I don't know, what do you attribute this to? My dad thinks it's something from the Irish side of the family. Mm-hmm. They both love to talk.
Okay.
And they both love to talk, but they take turns though talking. Mm-hmm. And so there were many times when we would go and visit him in Barrigada, and we would bring his favorite pastry, I guess, which is apple pie.
Oh, yeah.
And we'd get this from the Palomo store in Barrigada, mm-hmm. and we'd bring it over and his eyes would just light up. And so that was sort of, you know, and then as we talk among the family members, it was like, where did he come from? You know, how many brothers and sisters does he have? And that kind of got me going. So I started out by sending out letters to the Department of the Navy, Department of the Marine Corps, because he was in the Army and then he was in the Marine Corps. And so I actually was able to receive from the Department of the Navy a lot of the stuff that he had as a Marine. You probably, and you know, this is what I want to share, he reported to duty back in 1903 to Marine Barracks at Naval Station Guam. Mm-hmm. And
at that point he was 23 years old, born in 1880.
That's exactly right.
Oh, wow.
That's exactly right.
So still a very young man.
He's still a very young man, and keep in mind that he enlisted in the Army at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas in 1900. So I wasn't sure whether when he boarded the ship to head to Guam in 1903, whether he had been to the Pacific or whether this was the first time heading out to the, you know, to the Pacific and on to Guam, his new duty station. Mm-hmm. I found out that actually when he was in the Army, his unit was in the Philippines during the Philippine insurrection. Mm-hmm. So he had been out here before.
Okay. One of the illustrations, I know, I was going through the book right at the end, you have laid out your family tree. I know my dad was very much into the whole genealogy and, you know, and doing it by hand for a long time. What did that mean to you, and what kind of emotional experience was that for you? Because I know my dad would always get very, very drawn and very, you know, very teary-eyed when he went through this, and there's so much he didn't know and that he discovered.
Yeah, it is quite an experience, you know, finding out about in my case, my grandparents. Mm-hmm. And there were conflicting information that I was hearing from family members. And so as we put the family tree together, I mean, we found out for one thing that his mother's name is Lillian Nellie Young. And his grandfather, although we always thought it was Arthur William Jackson, it's not. It's William A. Jackson. And I'm presuming that the A stands for Arthur, mm-hmm. because there's quite a few people in the family that are named Arthur. Mm. And so we got these revelations, and he was like, wow, you know, it's almost like when you're putting it together, it's you have this experience that somebody's watching you also. And I really felt this, Jason. While I was writing out his biography, I almost felt like there's a presence, weird as it may sound.
Not
but,
at all.
But it's almost like, you know, I was being guided along this journey. And that's probably the reason I would think that your dad would get pretty much into it and get pretty emotional.
And he felt like he was performing his duty as a son, as a grandson, as a great-grandson, to continue that legacy.
Exactly. And, you know, I see myself as just an instrument. I was really just an instrument in putting this thing together.
Well, Doc, this is fantastic work. Where can people find this? Because certainly this is something that people have to read. Your grandfather was alive during a completely different time in human history and everything like that. So it's fascinating work. Where can people actually avail this?
Okay, we're going to have kind of a launch thing scheduled up at MARC, Micronesian Area Research Center at the University of Guam, Tuesday. And at that time, we're going to have, you know, some family members, and we're going to have copies of the book. And we're going to take, we're going to have a clipboard, and people that are interested in buying copies of the book can put their name and information where we can contact them so that we can get back to them and try to get the copy of the book to them. All
right, well, certainly this was an amazing journey, I'm sure, for you, and thank you for sharing it with us.
Oh, my pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity to get the word out.
All right, it's incredible work, and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
All right, please stay tuned, everybody. We continue with our show right after this.